This program is brought to you by Newsworks in cooperation with Eau Claire County. This program is simulcast on WRFP-LP 101.9 FM.
I call to order this regular meeting of the Eau Claire County Board of Supervisors on this Tuesday, January the 15th. Supervisors, please rise for honoring the flag and the moment of reflection by Supervisor Schroffnagel. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Happy New Year, everyone. We're into 2019, and I want to encourage all of us and our citizens to get involved with something they care about. If you love animals, volunteer at the Humane Association or Bob's House for Dogs. If you feel fulfilled when helping someone, volunteer to deliver meals for Meals on Wheels to the elderly and homebound citizens. If you love to read, volunteer to help children and adults learn to read with our literacy volunteers. If you like the outdoors, nature, wild animals, birds, and bugs, volunteer at Beaver Creek. If you are a history buff, volunteer at the Chippewa Valley Museum or Paul Bunyan Logging Camp. If you enjoy free flow of ideas, volunteer with Valley Media Works, WISE, or WPR. If you enjoy bicycling, running, walking, paddling, then volunteer with the Eau Claire Pie Riders, the Chippewa Valley Off-Road Bike Association, or the Clearwater Paddlers. These are just a few things you can get involved with this new year. So step out of your comfort zone, meet new people, and celebrate all the volunteer activities Eau Claire County has to offer.
Thank you. Tonight's meeting will be broadcast on Valley Media Works Charter Channel 994 on Thursday at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. following this meeting. On WFRP LP 101.9 FM and online at valleymediaworks.org. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and indicate your presence.
Something's happened in the media room, so you're not going to see it on the screen, but I do have it recorded here, so if you would, I'll tell you if you didn't check in. Supervisor Gibson, McKinney, Moritz, Coffey, Leary.
Leary's not here.
Okay. DeLuca and Lavelle. Dunning, if you could just confirm. Okay. There's 26 present.
26 present. We have a quorum. The next item on our agenda is approval of the Journal of Proceedings. Motion, please. Motion by Supervisor Henning, second by Supervisor Kronk. Are there any deletions, corrections of the Journal of Proceedings? Seeing none, we'll do this by a voice vote. All those in favor of approving the Journal of Proceedings indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed by nay. It is unanimous. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is public comment, but we have no public to comment. So we will move to item number 6, reports to the County Board under 2.04.320, beginning with the oral reports. A 6th courtroom update by the Honorable Michael Schumacher, who is making his way up.
So good evening, everyone. I know many of you, not all of you. On behalf of the judiciary, I want to thank this board for the support they've given the judiciary in the past for our quest for a 6th branch, one more judge here in Eau Claire County. In August 15th of 2017, this board unanimously passed a resolution asking the legislature to give us one more judge. Despite the time and effort that many have spent on that issue and 3 runs at it in the last 3 years, We haven't had any new judges here in the state of Wisconsin. In fact, the legislature has not approved any new judges since 2007. I'm going to give you about 10 seconds worth of the need for the new judge. This is kind of water under the bridge already, I think. But there's what's called a weighted caseload study done by the Director of State Courts that helps figure out which counties need more judges, which ones are working too hard, which ones aren't working hard enough, that kind of thing. And what we found out in the study from 2015 and 2017 is that each judicial officer here in Eau Claire County, that includes a court commissioner, is doing the caseload of 1.35 judges. The data shows that we're in need of 2.12 more judges. And you've agreed with that. You've seen that, and as I say, I'm not going to spend any more time on that. So I want to tell you how we get a new judge, or how any county gets a new judge. There's no judge for anybody unless the legislature passes a bill approving new judges for different counties. Historically, that's happened about every 10 years or so. It's been 12 years now since the last judge was appointed in any county. There's no rule about how many counties can be on a judicial bill. In the past, there have been as many as more than 10 in the 80s and the 90s. The draft bill now includes 12 different counties in the state of Wisconsin. And I'll tell you that Eau Claire County falls right about in the middle. We're the 7th most needy county in the state of Wisconsin for another judge. So I'll tell you what has to happen. We need to get sponsors for a bill, and we're busy doing that, finding legislators who are interested in this topic. Eau Claire needs to get on the bill. The bill needs to be passed, and if everything went as smoothly as possible, the soonest any of that would happen would be a spring election in 2020 and a judge here working for us in August of 2020. So this board has passed a resolution. Construction is funded in the budget. The plans are virtually complete. It's our understanding that the construction would take about 3 to 4 months. And here's the questions that I've heard most recently and that I hope to respond to tonight and answer any other questions you might have about this. And I think the questions boil down to these. One, why build now if we're not sure Eau Claire will get on the bill? Let alone have the bill passed. Second, why build now if the best scenario is that we won't have a judge here, sitting judge, until August of 2020? I think those are good questions. I think those are very fair questions, and I think I've got good responses. And so I want to tell you about that. Need is certainly a primary factor for the legislature in determining which counties should get new judges, but it doesn't end there. There's also the question of a physical facility. That's a significant issue for the legislature. Now I need to tell you the story about Monroe County a few years ago. Monroe County needed a new judge, and they promised to build a new courthouse if the legislature passed the bill and gave them a new judge. The legislature did just that. They got a new judge, and there was some shakeup on the county board, and they rescinded their decision to build a new courthouse, and a new judge showed up anyway, and that judge presided in the basement of the courthouse for a significant period of time while they went about making arrangements to build a better facility, which eventually did happen. So the moral of the story is that the legislature, I think, felt like they got burned in that situation. And the conventional wisdom since that time has been, don't even ask for another judge unless you've got a courtroom in which to put that judge. Now, I can't tell you that Eau Claire County will not get a judge if we don't have a physical facility available for that judge, but I can tell you that our chances improve, certainly if we have a facility for a judge to move into immediately. So the question then becomes, so what will happen if we build a courtroom We don't have a judge until August of 2020 at best. Is it just going to sit empty? We got no business going on there? Not at all. That courtroom will be used all day, every day, like all of the other courtrooms in the county at this point in time. Let me tell you why. Currently, we have 5 judges. We have 5 courtrooms. 4 of them are equipped to handle jury trials. 1 has no jury box and no jury room in which a jury can deliberate. And so when Judge Harless has a jury trial, we need to swap courtrooms from time to time. One of the other judges moves out and she moves into one of the jury rooms. It's really not a good situation. Judge Harless talked about the last time she did that. She's walking up and down the public hallways, and there was some witnesses that were not happy. She's walking back and forth in front of them. She felt uncomfortable in that situation. But the point is, Judge Harless moves around. If we build a new courtroom, then we'll have 5 jury rooms, 5 courtrooms with juries, and all of the judges would have one of those courtrooms. The present Branch 5, which has no jury room, would be used by the court commissioner, the family court commissioner, who now is in a little hearing room on the 2nd floor. If you've never gone to that little hearing room for the court commissioner, go there. I stopped in tonight before I came downstairs here, and literally one can take 3 steps from council table and be right on top of the court commissioner. I'm more concerned about the safety of the people in that courtroom, that hearing room, than anywhere in the building. He hears contentious things, largely pro se, in other words, no lawyers involved, and I think it's the most dangerous place on the 2nd floor, to be honest with you. And so the plan would be, get him out of there if we're waiting for a new judge, make use of the new courtroom, put him in the 5th branch that doesn't have a jury room, and while we're waiting for the new judge, everything looks pretty good. Once we get a new judge, we'll have to figure out what we're going to do with that court commissioner on a long-term basis, but at least we've got a little time to figure that out. Next is, we've been told by administration, court administration, that they'd be happy to send us a reserve judge from time to time. 6 months or so ago, the presiding judge in the district told us we would be able to get a reserve judge about once a week. I talked to some administrators yesterday, district court administrators. He said, we might have to back off of that a little bit. It may not be a commitment of as much as once a week, but we'll get you some relief while all of this is pending. Point being, we'll have yet another judicial official here on at least a periodic basis to take up business that otherwise we wouldn't be getting to, at least as quickly as we'd be able to get to it. So we'll make the public have better access to the courts, even with having a reserve judge. So for those reasons, I think that all of the judges here in this county would urge you, if we're going to build a new courtroom, let's do it now. The resolution's been passed, the money's there. There's really no good reason to wait from our perspective. I'm not going to step on your toes, but I wanted to let you know our perspective on that topic. And that completes what I wanted to say. Does anyone have a question before we go? All right, thank you for letting us share our thoughts.
Thank you. The next oral report is on the jail population. Who is, Tiana, are you presenting? Oh, the whole group.
Good evening. I have a group of us that will be presenting to you tonight. So they're going to line up, and unfortunately we're going to have to move in and out here. So I'm Tiana Glenn. I'm the Criminal Justice Manager for Eau Claire County, and I'm the staff to the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council, which I'll be talking about in a minute. We have District Attorney Gary King. You know all these people, so I'm just going to go through it as need because it makes me feel special. Lieutenant Dave Rivas-Dahl, Lieutenant Dave, and Captain Dan Brzezina. We have Mike Felton, supervisor from Department of Corrections. And most of us will be speaking today, otherwise we're going to be available for comments. Mike will be available for comments or questions from the aspect of Department of Corrections. I also have Judge Schumacher in the back, which you just heard from, and he is the chair to the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council, so he is here in support of what we're doing as to this resolution that we'll be speaking of. So what we're going to be focusing on today is the resolution that you passed a few weeks ago on the jail population. So we're going to be looking at the history, quick overview of the history as to the reason why we asked for this resolution, and some of the quick data. And I say quick because there's going to be a large study that's going to be coming up, and we'll be presenting to you in June with that study. So we're going to be touching on that 10,000-foot view as to the history of Eau Claire County and the jail population. What have we done since we started the CJCC, and how has that impacted our jail population, and where could we have been if not doing some of the work that we have been doing through the CJCC? Why did we ask for the resolution? And then what next? So what should you expect in June when we present the report, and what are we going to be doing in the meantime? So quick, you all live in Eau Claire. You understand our population. The one thing I want to call out here is the census information. We have had an increase, according to the census, since 2010, 4.8% in our county population. I just want you to keep that in your mind when we go through some of these numbers, because as our population grows, other things end up increasing inside the county, crime, and a lot of other good, healthy things, but we do see an impact on the crime and the rates that we're going to be hearing from Gary King. You saw the resolution. I'm not going to go into detail about it. I am going to go into detail just around what we're going to be doing. And I can't read that, I'm sorry, nor can I squint down there. What we're going to be doing inside of this work group. So as I said, when I started hearing and been working with Captain and Lieutenant about the jail population, working with Judiciary and Law Committee, I heard a lot of people talking about this, and it was being discussed in different committees, meetings, and I wanted to bring some direction to that. And that is why we, as a county, established the CJCC, the Criminal Justice Collaborating Council, is to bring forward these difficult discussions. We have all the key stakeholders at the table in that group, and so this is the reason that I proposed bringing the resolution forward. With this resolution, the areas that we're really going to be focusing on, we have a short period of time that we're going to be doing this, so these are the focus areas, is conduct a cost-benefit analysis on the housing of out-of-county and building and or staffing of the new build-out. So what would it cost to build everything? What's it going to cost to staff everything? And what is it going to cost to, if we did none of that, to continue to house out of county? Review the historical and projected jail population trends and the triggers to the overpopulation that we're seeing. Why are we housing out? Who are we seeing coming into the system? Why are we seeing the influx, and how is that impacting us inside the system? And not just the jail, we're talking the system. So the jail is an effect of what's happening in the system. So we can only house so many people in the jail, and only certain people should be in the jail. So how is that? How are those trends panning out, and what is our new norm inside of that? We have some work groups at the state legislature regarding bail and conditional release, so we'll bring forward some of those findings. Develop a sentencing program for the medium to medium high risk inmates that we're seeing coming into our jail, working with Department of Corrections and the District Attorney's Office on having alternative placements for those persons that are in our jail. Exploring evidence-based programming in the community. So how can the community become more involved in what we're doing? How can we reach out to them for some of the services that we may need or have identified with our population? And a note to all this, we're doing a lot of this already, so it's just enhancing or identifying what's actually being done. Work with Department of Corrections on classification, what it means, and understanding the jail holds, revocations, and after-hour holds. And then a review of the change in the projected demographics of the county. So we saw the 4.8% increase. What does that look like, and how is that going to impact us in the future? And what is our age bracket that we're going to be seeing inside the county and inside the growth? So I'm going to turn it over to District Attorney King. You're going to have to.
Good evening. I want to outline a little bit of what we've done recently as far as interventions to affect the jail population, and then really give an overview of some of our jail data, so it gives you a good perspective of, I think, where we've been, where we are today, and what some projections look like for the coming years. So we established CJCC in 2008, working on many state committees. I think we have one of the stronger CJCCs in the state of Wisconsin. Not every county has one of those, but every county is working towards having one of them. Our EBDM work, or evidence-based decision-making work, began in 2010 as a subcommittee of the CJCC. 2012-13 is when the new facility opened. Some of you may recall we had a Huber Review committee in 2013. I want to express my thanks to former Administrator McCarty for having me on all three of those subcommittees so we could meet 26 times in 5 months, which we did, and decided that the Huber facility had merit to stay open. In 2008, our average daily population in the jail was 261. In 2017, that bumped to 276. Other things that were implemented during the course of that time was the proxy form at the law enforcement level. All 10 of our agencies asked 3 questions of people they arrest: age of first arrest, and number of prior arrests, and that gave them a score, a risk score on a scale of 0 to 6 that helped them determine who should be going to the jail and who may be ordered in versus having to sit in jail overnight or for a weekend. Diversion, our diversion program, we've diverted over 1,700 people in the last 7 years from prosecution. And we have 1-, 2-, and 3-year recidivism studies that show those folks come back to our system about half as much as the people that we traditionally prosecute. Compass R&R, that is not a directional vacation. Compass is correctional offender management profiling for alternative sanctions, and the R&R is risk, needs, and responsivity. So what we're doing as a system is assessing offenders' general risk, assessing what needs they have, and then when we go to a disposition in front of our circuit courts, we want to give the judges information about individuals at the time of disposition to put them on the best path to not reoffend, okay? So more individual planning. CTC, our Community Transition Center, we've diverted over 700 people a year from the jail so that they report there and receive services there and can be safely monitored in the community without spending time in our county jail. As you know, a data analyst was approved in 2013. We started operating while intoxicated early intervention program in 2014. That program, at its best, was diverting about 5,000 people a year from the jail. Fourth offenses changed, went to felonies. Now we primarily service second and third offenses. DAGPs, or deferred acceptance of guilty plea. That program's been around since 2001, and we have about 300 or more people participate in that program each year. We've developed a niche with respect to meth cases there. Order-ins versus jails. You might think, given the population, given the number of cases we have, that bookings have gone up over the last 10 years. We'll see a graph in a little bit to show that that's not the case. Where it says warrant program, I believe we're the only county in the state of Wisconsin where a judge authorizes a warrant for someone's arrest, and rather than getting arrested, the individual walks into our office and we schedule a hearing with the judge so that they don't have to sit in jail overnight or until they get a hearing. If they get picked up by law enforcement, that's different. But as a general rule, people walk in on warrants, and that saves, I think, thousands of jail bed days a year because of that. in addition to our bond review program. So let's look at some data review. Again, we talked about the bookings in general. Really, the secure population is where we've seen the largest increase. But again, if you look at the bookings from 2008 into 2017, they actually went down about 1,000 people over that decade because of the evidence-based practices that have been implemented. However, if you look at the bottom part there, the felony filings, we've exploded. Just over 800 in 2008, and last year we were over 1,920 felonies, and that was an increase of 25% just from 2017. These numbers are getting a little bit harder to see on there, but what I would note, again, if you look at the felonies from 2008 to 2018, you've seen a dramatic increase, 800 and some to over 1,900. However, because of our evidence-based practices, I think largely, the misdemeanor cases have gone down from 2,186 in 2008 to just over 1,500 last year, and our criminal traffic files went from 924 in 2008 to 400 last year. So it tells me we're focusing more on our higher risk offenders, and the programs that we're using to follow evidence-based practices are resulting in fewer misdemeanors. One example I can give of that, ever since I've been DA, if you are charged with operating after revocation with your driver's license, in the past you would get conviction for OIR, you would get a point ticket, and you would dig yourself a further license hole. We now encourage people, if you can get a license, you will get a penalty, but it'll be a non-point ticket, so you're still going to be punished, but you're not going to get additional points off your license. And we've seen a consistent amount of people every year work toward getting their driver's license back. They're driving legally. They're not getting pulled over for OIRs. I think our OWI program has also helped in that regard. And you'll get this emailed to you, but our data analysts put together a 10-year look back on our jail numbers. And what I want you to focus on is the average daily population went from 261 people in 2008 to 276 people in 2017. Now last year, I believe that number was 291. And while that's a significant jump, those of you that are new to the board need to understand, when the jail was being built, the population was going up an average of 5 to 7% a year. And the board challenged the justice system to make that around a 1% gain per year. And that is in fact what's happened from 08 through last year. We've been between 1 and 2% increase. In fact, if we had been a 2% increase from 2008 through last year, our current population would be 314 on an average daily population. We're not close to that. Had we continued to grow at 7% a year instead of 291 or 314, we'd be at 484 people in our facility. So I think the moral of the story is the system has done a lot of things to keep those numbers down and in check and hold to that 1% increase that we're talking about. But if you're going to look at the growth of the county, and specifically if you're going to look at our case filings, for the years 15, 16, and 17, we averaged 3,400 cases a year, filings. It was flatlined. It was consistent each of those 3 years. In 2017, that number went up to 3,830 total cases. So we went up by 428 case filings, 393 of which were felony. I ran our numbers tonight before I came here for this year. For the first half of January, projected it out for the rest of the year. We're projecting at 3,960 cases right now, which would be fairly consistent with where we were last year, which tells me 2019 is going to look a lot more like 2018 than it's going to look like 17, 16, or 15. What does that mean? We're going to have more felony cases. We're going to continue to deal with higher risk people, and it's going to be an additional stress on our jail population, especially our secure folks. So that's some historical overview of what we're looking at. I think you'll find when you look at these a little bit closer that those numbers are going to be pretty consistent going forward. It doesn't mean we still won't do everything we can to implement evidence-based practices and not have people in that facility who don't need to be there. But in terms of natural growth and trends and population and felony case filings, I think we're seeing some pretty consistent figures. So we'll move on to our next presenter and we'll take questions afterwards. Thank you.
Good evening. As Etienne mentioned, I'm Dave Riebestal. I'm the lieutenant with the Eau Claire County Sheriff's Office. And in that role, my job is to oversee the day-to-day operations of the jail and how we operate. So I'm going to try to share a little bit about how we work and how we operate with you guys, from new members to veteran members. So we're all in the same knowledge base come June for our presentation. This is our secure projections. This graph was created in 2017. You're going to see a couple red lines, green lines, and some other trend lines that go up and down. I'll kind of quickly explain. The green line that you see there is going to be the trend line. What we were seeing at 4.55%. The red line was where we actually were. Looking back from 2008 to 2017, and then where it splits apart like fingers, high or low, that's increasing 1%, decreasing 2%, and in between there. The takeaway here is we're always above that dashed line that goes horizontal there. That dashed line is 80%. So for the jail, 80%, we're full. Unlike an airplane, we don't want every seat taken. We need to have space for people that come in that meet the classification levels, so they're housed appropriately. Highlight here on the next slide. Going back, we have the old jail on the left side column, how many beds we had. And then we're going to focus mostly here on the middle column where it says 2012, 258 secure beds. So when we talk about Eau Claire County Jail, there are basically two areas that people are housed: secure population or Huber. Huber population, think of those people as they're released for school, work, treatment, childcare, and then they come back to jail. Those are our sentenced folks. The secure population, they don't leave jail. They come to jail and they sit there until their hold is released, until they get out at court the next day, you name it. They're our secure population. Our jail has 3 separate housing areas. Each one has a different feel for the inmates in those housing areas. There's a medium pod, a maximum pod, and a special needs pod. And I'm not going to bore you with numbers and try to give you too many, but we'll kind of break down what is a pod, what is a block, and what is a cell. Looking out here, each person at their seat, we'll call it, that's your cell, okay? Everybody in your row is in your block. Those are people who have the like classification as you. You will share a day room together. You will share, there's a common TV, kiosk, phones, shower. Each block, your membership, you're a pod. So you would be, we'll call you our medium pod instead of our maximum pod. So you're our medium pod. You all are supervised by 2 correctional officers, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Whether we have every bed full, there's 2. So I have 2 officers watching 110 people if we are completely full in our maximum pod. Some of our beds aren't counted in DOC, and why is that? Well, that is because they're not considered housing, they're transitional housing. So our booking, down in booking, that's where the new people come in, freshly arrested off the street. Those people, there are 22 beds down there and 1 safety cell. So kind of the flow of how things work, you get arrested, you come to jail, photographed, fingerprinted, and then you'll be housed in the holding cell down in booking. The next day, usually, you'll see court at 11 o'clock is intake court for all new crimes. And for the most part, you're going to get out. If you do stay, that's when you're going to move upstairs to our housing, one of the 3 pods. We do have a 4th pod. It's a shelled pod. And when it was designed and laid out in 2012, there was a possibility to have 94 beds based on that design back in 2012. So I'm going to focus mostly here on our secure population because that is our biggest concern today. Our average daily population for 2018 was 236 inmates, which is a 93% increase since our jail opened in 2012. The number of bookings have also gone up since 2012 by just shy of 1,000. Granted, it's less than we were in 2008, but the new jail was built and we're creeping back up there. Our pretrials, our felonies are increasing, as D.A. King mentioned. Our misdemeanors, marginal, very little increase, and pretrial with PO holds, you can see there's 31, almost 32%. We feel our major concern is related to methamphetamine and mental health with our population and our community. So these numbers, and there's a lot of them, and I will not go into all of them, but outlines kind of who is here and why. And these are from 2017. I want to draw your attention to the far right, to bright yellow highlights. You're going to see length of stay, less than 2 days. 53% of our population is less than 2 days, in and out. So why are they in and out? There's a couple of reasons. If they're picked up by law enforcement and they have a warrant, they have to spend the night in jail till they see the judge at 11 o'clock that next day. We have mandatory arrests for domestic violence. For OWIs, you're required to come to jail and have a sober person come get you, or we'll release you once you are sober. We are required to keep these people for that less than 2 days. The next highlighted part there is 2 to 10 days, and you're going to see that 22% of our population leaves in 2017 within that 2 to 10 day period. I briefly mentioned earlier about classification, and I will gloss over it at the most simplistic level. An individual is arrested, and we are required to classify them. We break them down, first off, by gender. For the most simplest terms of this presentation, there's a male and a female. After that, we look at their charge risk. They can, based off of their charges, they are going to be either minimum, medium, or maximum. And then after that, we look at their behavior. How are they? How do they behave when they're in jail? And it's further broken down into different levels, AB, MB, HB, GP. My goal is not to have you know all these different acronyms for behavior, but just know that we have to separate these folks so that like people, based off of their gender, their charge, and their behavior, are housed in the same location. So when we talk about shipping out, what does that mean? Our maximum number of beds for secure inmates is 258. Going back to that 80% number, that gives us 206 inmates. This allows us to meet the classification standards set out by the state, the gender, charge, behavior. This also allows us for room for the new bookings that come in. As D.A. King mentioned, the police are busy. Crime is up, or filings are up, and they come to us. Sometimes we get 20 plus bookings in a 24-hour period. For the most part, those bookings are absorbed down in our holding area, and they'll see the judge the next day and hopefully get out. So for us, our decision point to ship out is purely a number. It's 220 inmates. When we get to this number, we can't effectively operate the jail. We can't classify properly. We're having space issues. So for us, when I get to that 220 mark, we are calling Dunn County, we're calling Chippewa County. Do you have beds? If so, what kind, male or female, what classification level? Thankfully, They've always had beds, but those beds are in high demand. And we're not the only jail that is full. So looking at 2018, we spent just around $175,000 this year shipping inmates to Dunn and Chippewa County. That's the top left bubble graph there. The bottom box there on the right, I will explain that to you. We got a variance through Department of Corrections to house secure inmates in one block over in the Huber Center. So right now, currently, we maintain about 20 male secure inmates in this Huber block. Utilizing this block, we've made it an honor dorm for those minimum classified inmates who are truly well behaved. In this block, they get more privileges. They can order more food and snacks and stuff like that off of the canteen system. People want to go to the honor dorm. It's a better spot to do your time. This has provided the county a savings, we'll call it, by not shipping out of just shy of just over $235,000 by getting this variance to the Department of Corrections. Now we're going to talk about the Huber Center. We talked about the Secure Center. We're going to talk about the Huber side. So for the last 10 years, EBDM practices in the jail, actually 8 years, has reduced those lower risk offenders. You're going to see the average daily population in 2008 was 96 inmates. For last year, it was 55. Our EBDM work is working. The people that don't belong in jail, the low risk, the minor charges, they're not here. Those are the folks that would have been in Huber. But we're down 41 less people since 2008. So gold star, pat on the back, EBDM work is working. The people that don't belong in jail are not there anymore. And moving forward.
So what does this all mean? It means that we have a lot of work ahead of us. Now, there is a committee that has been formed. We have Don Mowry and Kim Kronk on the committee that is working on this work. So, and then that committee is also made up, and I'm not going to name the individuals, but I got where they're from. Our Community Transition Center, Department of Corrections, Department of Human Services, the Police Department, the Sheriff's Department, the jail, the County Administrator, and some others. I'm missing people, but other key stakeholders, the judiciary that sits on that committee. And so we are meeting, again, we just had a meeting. We're meeting again on the 29th of this month. And then we're going, from that point, we're going to be discussing, do we need to meet every other week or every third week? But in between that, the work is going to be done as to what we're going to be focusing on, which I just talked to you about in the fact sheet that we just spoke of. So it's really looking at the resolution to change. What are we going to do within the CJCC and bringing that discussion forward? Have our data analysts look at the historical trends and put together some data for us. We're working with our finance department in what the cost benefit is and laying out the costs for all that I mentioned before, housing out, not housing, and building out that facility, the fourth pod in there. And then what is the new norm, and laying that out in clear terms as to what are we going to be seeing in the future, and what does our future of our jail look like. And then also outlining some of the other initiatives that we have inside of Eau Claire County that are working with this population, and how can we enhance some of that work. For example, our Stepping Up initiative, working with the mental health aspect of the clients coming in and the contact with law enforcement at the street. That's not going to be a primary focus in this group, but it is a committee that is working, and it will have some impact on the work that we're doing. So right now, are there any questions that you may have for any of the members here?
Supervisor Moritz.
Yes, and I'm new to this board. In 2012, how many beds were added? Secure.
126 to 258.
I don't understand your answer.
So our old jail, we have 126 beds.
Okay.
And our new jail, we have 258 secure beds.
And Huber stayed
Huber
stayed the
Center.
same minus the female Huber Center.
And then as a follow-up question, when we talk about the build of fourth pod, would that add 94?
In its original plan in 2012, it could have. Now, state standards have changed for how much space an inmate needs to have. In 2012, the numbers were smaller. They need to have more unencumbered space. So without doing some more analysis, is that the right word? It's going to be somewhere around that 90 bed mark if it was opened, the way it was designed in 2012.
That was per its design in 2012. Based on the population that we're seeing today, we may look at that design differently. What I mean by that is we've seen an increase in some of the dynamics of our population, difficult, if I will, type of behaviors that we're seeing in our facility may not be a 94-bed direct supervision pod, for example. So we're internally looking at that. If you were to say, yes, build it tomorrow, what would that look like? So we're trying to do that work in preparation for what that might look like.
Supervisor Miller.
Mr. Chair, Lieutenant Dave, as long as you're up there, could you also just clarify or point out that those less than 2-day stay, that 52%, they are not counted in the secure numbers?
No, they are.
They
but
are
we're able
counted
to,
in the secure
they
numbers.
generally will stay down in booking. They don't get moved up to housing until they're classified. And that is where I have to try to find the right spot for that person based off their classification. So in booking, you're going to cell by yourself. There's no day room. So I could have a maximum person right next to a minimum person, but there's no interaction. There's concrete and steel and walls. And so I can put those types of people right next to each other in booking. But when they have to move upstairs and they're classified and have to be housed, that is where the crunch takes place.
Thank you.
Supervisor Beckfield.
I've been watching in the news lately about this qualification change of OWIs being reduced from a certain classification down even further. How would that affect our jail population? Would that put more pressure on by that or not?
Well, we'll talk about just the initial, if every OWI, whether it's first through, we'll call it the highest you can go, they come to jail automatically so they can get booked in, photographed, fingerprinted, and then released to a responsible party. So that initial booking already takes place. It's going to be once they're sentenced and go through the court process that it may.
So most of our felonies now.
Excuse me, Captain Brasina, would you come forward to the microphone for the sake of the media recording?
My voice doesn't carry very far?
No, it's for the media.
So most of our OWIs have minimum mandatory sentences. So most of the time on an OWI first, on non-criminal, folks never see jail except for the initial booking piece, unless their BAC levels are extremely high. It's not a crime in Wisconsin. If they make that change, there will most likely be minimum mandatory sentences, so that would impact our facility if that's the question you're looking at.
That is the question. Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Bourbois.
I was going to have a quick follow-up to that. Once, got too many people here. But once they're sentenced, generally, the judge grants a Huber. I have room in Huber. I have 41 less people this year than I did in 2008. I can take sentenced Huber inmates. I have that capacity. It's the secure population. Is that? Okay.
Thank you. Supervisor Bourbois.
Yeah, okay, my question is for you, Lieutenant Dan. How many people, how often do you, put people to different counties? Is it every day or every week, or?
It's ebb and flow. We're at the mercy of who gets arrested. I can't tell who's going to get arrested that day. Generally, we send, so this past weekend we sent 10 to Chippewa, or 9 to Chippewa. Before that, we didn't ship out until probably a couple months prior to that. But that's all. Okay, it was the holidays. People maybe behaved better. Didn't affect my secure population. I can't put every 10 days. It's not that frequent. I can't get that specified.
So just as a informational point, we were ready to ship on Friday, but we held. hoping that we would get through another weekend, and we do that on every Thursday or every Friday. We look at our jail population, we look at it on Monday mornings to see where we're at. It's not an automatic, so on Sunday is when we made that decision to place those inmates out of county. We had literally no room at the inn left. There were no beds left in our facility before we made that choice. So we really are conscientious. We also know that safety and security within the walls for our correctional officers are extremely important, but not only for them, but for the inmates themselves. That's why there is classification in place, to make sure that they're safe as well. So that's where our pressure points come in, and that's why we make those decisions.
Thank you. Supervisor Bates.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a question in regard to our probation holds, and perhaps we could have a little more information as to how the county becomes responsible, if you will, for individuals who are really part of a state issue rather than a county issue. And is there any possibility over time of changing the way that happens?
Maybe I can address your last question first. I started in Minnesota, different system over there. Probation parole is more of court services. They had situations over in Minnesota by county where misdemeanor probation was sometimes handled by the county. Anything felony-wise was handled by the state. So the burden was split as far as who was paying for supervision, who was paying for services, who was paying for treatment, who was paying for programming for those clients. So that's one option if you talk about that. Everyone that we supervise on probation has earned probation. And I just want to put that this way, that we don't supervise Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. We only supervise higher risk. Our lower risk people have definitely been diverted out of the system, especially over the last 5 or 6 years. More challenging clients, more higher risk, evidence-based practices would say that's who we want to focus on. We don't want our lower risk people that could be on probation supervision to get worse by hanging out with everybody else in our probation lobbies. We don't want them to be worse by committing a violation, ending up in jail, becoming worse that way. So just so you know, that's kind of the population we're working with. When it comes down to who's on probation, and that's a state issue, if they weren't on probation, they would be sitting jail initially. Does that make sense? They're given the option, not always the option. How do I put this? Probation is a privilege, and it is earned. They are put on probation, and we don't take jail lightly. I've been doing this for about 20 years now, Minnesota, Wisconsin, et cetera. When I first started out, people definitely earned prison. You had to do a lot to get into prison, period. How I've looked at it now the past 10 years, people have to do a lot to earn probation, and people have to do a lot to earn their way into jail. We don't operate like we did 20 years ago. Jail's not an easy answer. Prison's not an easy answer. Probation's not an easy answer. If that kind of helps how we're looking at our philosophy, we have many options in working with our clients. Jails, at best, would stop the behavior. It doesn't change our clients. So that's why we have to do more of the social work that we've been doing over the last 8, 9, 10 years to really work with our clients to bring about that change. Does that, I know that covered quite a bit there, but.
Yeah, and I'm not sure it actually gives me any sense of hope. I sort of feel as though, again, a lot of what we are doing, even though we're doing some really wonderful things, we know that basically people don't come out of jail better. The system as it currently exists is certainly one that we always have to keep looking for better solutions for the population that's there. But I do think that the individuals coming into our jail from probation create a significant part of our problem.
Mm-hmm. And we do have some numbers. I really want to double check and make it a full picture. So I know in June we'll present a full picture of what it looks like for Department of Corrections.
Thank you.
But our numbers had gone down in about 2012. And how the DA had mentioned there's an uptick, definitely, starting then where it kind of accelerated. If you're talking about meth especially, impacting our mental health and other issues, we thought we're out of the woods. Our probation population for intakes in 2015 was about 500. By about, I'm sorry, 2010 was about 500. By 2015, it had reached 800. intakes a year. And that is a pretty significant number when you figure that already at that point, we're diverting out the lowest risk people from coming on to supervision. So,
Thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Stelches.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The thing that jumped out at me was what Lieutenant David said, showing the statistic that the average stay, at least over 50% of the population, was 2 days or less. But statistics can be a little bit misleading. Does that mean that if I walked into the jail on an average day, that 50% of that population would be gone in 2 days? Is that a correct interpretation or not?
It depends on the person, on the situation, what that group of people are there for. If it's something as simple as a warrant, they see the judge the next day and hopefully get a signature bond and are out the door.
Right. But on the average, is that a correct interpretation? I mean, I realize that there's variations day to day. And okay. So that would say that the bulk of these people are waiting for some sort of process to occur, right? Going in front of a judge or something, right?
So for the most part, the jail is kind of the entrance to the criminal justice system.
Right, right.
We kind of kick it off.
Okay, so would it be then safe to say that half of our jail population is being driven by the fact that we're not processing people? If we could process them instantaneously, which I know we can't, but if we could, would that reduce our jail population by 50% on average?
A lot of head shaking.
Well, I'm going to try to take a stab at that. That's part of what we're trying to assess with our review over the next 4 or 5 months, and we're biting off an awful lot here to get accomplished in a 4 or 5 month period of time. We're probably just going to scratch the surface and be able to put some additional trend lines, package it a lot better as far as what some of the challenges might look like. But like I always call him Lieutenant Rivestall, Lieutenant Dave, as he likes to be called. It's a lot easier, Lieutenant Dave, and I used to be called Lieutenant Dan with magic legs, but apparently he took my role. So it's a hard question to answer because it's always variable. Most of the folks that are coming in are intaked, and the goal is to get them out as quickly as possible. And we do a really good job with that here in our county based on some of the state requirements that were talked about before. Domestic violence is a mandatory arrest. OWIs are mandatory arrests, and so on and so forth. So it depends on what that looks like. They may end up with a cash bond for a period of time. They may end up with a probation revocation, so they may end up with a signature bond, so now they're pretrial pending revocation. So we have to really separate those two items. What we're trying to say there is, if we can turn over the people on intake 52% of the time within 48 hours, we've done a really good job. That's what that statistic is driving at. Now we need to uncover some of the things that goes behind that. So we have a lot of people in our facility, and the key thing is most of our lengths of stay come in Huber where it's appropriate, right? And not in the secure side of the jail, but we do have people in secure jail that spend quite a bit of time in the secure side of jail based on the risk, right, to our community and the things that they do. Does that help get at what you're asking? The answer is maybe. We're going to look at that.
Yeah, I think that what I'm getting at is one area of opportunity would appear to be quicker throughput, quicker processing. And I know it can't be instantaneous, but if an officer brought in a person and there was a judge sitting right there and could, make a decision, that person would never go to jail. And
I don't know if that would
that's
be
not realistic. I understand that, but
not. There's a lot of things that factor into that.
Okay.
There are reasons why there are 48 hours to process folks through, follow-up investigatory type of things. There's potentially that could be looked at, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor Dunning.
I have two questions. One is for Dan. What is the ratio of employees per station if you were, hire the 2 people for the new station, how many are actually hired?
Oh, I see what you're asking me. So for every post, for a 24-hour period of time is 5.3 corrections officers.
5.3?
Yep.
Okay. My second question, I believe, relates to the lieutenant on the probation holds. I'm not sure I actually understand what a probation hold is.
Sure.
But if they are in our jail, are we paid by the state for holding them?
That's a great question. How the state does it is we count and quantify things called payable holds. And what those are is if someone is on felony supervision, probation, and they're put in the jail for just a rules violation. That could be something, it's basically something that's not illegal for them to do. They're drinking when they shouldn't. They're not reporting. They are breaking a no contact through probation. They're contacting a victim that we said that they shouldn't do, though the court said it was okay. Things like that are just rules violations, we reimburse the county. So for our felon rules violations, those have actually gone down in the past 11 years. Which you think about it, that's on one hand, that's a good thing that fewer people are being held in custody just for rules violations. But on the other hand, there's less reimbursement also too. There's some counties that count on that pot of money to keep growing every year. And that's not something we've necessarily accounted for, I believe, for the jail here, just because we've tried to do a good job of only holding people when there's criminal behaviors.
Okay.
You had a second question, or was that answered?
They were both answered.
Thank you. Supervisor McKinney.
There was a comment that we'd receive this full report of what we saw. Does that come out to each one of us by email?
Well, I can provide the PowerPoint to
Yeah.
you. The report in June of the full committee will be presented to you. You will get the report.
What we saw tonight.
Yes,
will we
I
be able to
will.
get copies of that?
Yes, I will get
It's
that
really
too.
hard to read the numbers.
We'll actually make sure that it's on our website, and then we'll send you a link to that.
Okay, thank you.
Supervisor Cronk.
Thank you. I just had I had a couple questions, more than 2, but I'll just ask 2. Just so I'm understanding the language, because I don't always understand like the acronyms, and I'm trying to learn quickly as I go. For the filings, if I come in to the jail and I have 10 felonies or 5 felonies, we'll say, is that 5 filings, or am I as an individual a filing? I don't know what a filing is. Because with the numbers, I'm just looking at your, like the case
the
filings.
filings are individual cases, so one person could have more than one case.
And more than one charge inside of a case.
But is that, so for the filings, like the increase, with the increase in filings, is that the increase in the amount, like could I be 5 of the?
Yes.
Okay. Because I didn't know if it was, a filing was for each felony or for each person that has committed however many, or been charged with however many felonies. I'm trying to discern what the numbers
And
are.
we can work with clerk of courts and our data analysts to break that down, as because I know he did some work with that, but this is.
I don't know if I'm asking.
Well, I think I kind of understand what you're saying, and I
Okay.
think to put that in perspective for the board, if we're pushing 4,000 filings a year,
Right.
we're probably prosecuting over 2,000 people. And at the same time, Secure is holding, about 230 to 250.
Okay.
So you have to understand, the vast majority of people that we're prosecuting are not in jail. It's a very, very small percentage.
Okay.
Very small. And that was one of the reasons why we happened to look at November of 2017 with our data analysts. And he found, I think it was like 420 or 430 people were released from the jail. And we thought, well, that's interesting. How long were they there? 53% were there 2 days or less. 22% were there less than 10 days. We thought, well, let's run that out for all of 2017. He did that. The numbers were all the same on average per month. 400 and some releases, and those percentages were very, very predictable. And again, a lot of it is statutory. You know, people that have to go there, people that the law enforcement has deemed sufficient enough to be held in custody until they can get in front of a judge and get released with conditions that will keep our public safe. And so, yeah, a lot of people come in and they go out, but there's a reason for them being there.
Okay. I just didn't know what the filing, like the filing number actually was. Not actually, but I just wanted to understand what that meant.
Sure.
My second question is, I think it was Mr. King, you had mentioned that the people were doing a really good job of, or I can't remember who said it actually, but it used to be like the 5 to 7% annual daily population per year, but then there was a challenge that was made, so then it was under the 1%, or it's been around under 1%. There was a lot of work that was done. So with the evidence-based practices that are happening in each of your areas, are there things that haven't quite occurred yet that are evidence-based that you're looking forward to or excited about happening?
Well, there's always that, and we'll never stop looking. Sometimes it's up to the legislature to tell us what we can and can't do. For example, the Justice Reinvestment Grant for the OWI cases, there was a statute that said if people are undergoing treatment, that we can document that second offense people can serve a minimum of X amount of days, third offense people can serve a minimum amount of days, as long as they're compliant with the program. And so we did that, and it worked really well, and now we're starting to study the people that have gone through that program. And we know, for instance, the first 29 people who completed the program 1 year after completion of the program had 0 drunk driving arrests. So that's part of the data work that we'll continue to do and continue to study. And if we can make inroads like that, great. We'll always continue to do it. You also have to look at the reverse side. And I know you've all paid attention to the state legislature, and every session there are bills introduced that talk about, for example, criminalizing first offense cases, increasing mandatory minimums for second, third, fourth offense cases. If those things happen, you know, our judges' hands are tied in those cases unless we can find a niche, you know, under a statute that allows us to somehow have people in some sort of program that we can reduce those mandatory minimums. But, you know, I think the good news is on the state level, there's a lot of that going on, because every county in this state, but for Dodge or places that have very large jails or prisons, is dealing with the same exact issues that Eau Claire County is dealing with jail population pressure. It's going on all over the state. So.
Thank you. For our final question, Supervisor Russell.
Thank you. I was just wondering what the status is of electronic monitoring. Was that discontinued in Eau Claire County, and why?
Sure. It was discontinued, suspended in the first of the year. And the reason why is because our Huber population, those sentenced, has gone down dramatically. The people who would qualify for Huber and further qualify for EM aren't in jail anymore. So for 2018, we had a handful of people on EM throughout the year. I think the average daily population for EM was like 4. So it didn't make sense to have EM for just a small portion of people when we can reallocate that Huber or that electronic monitoring officer to the booking counter where we're getting slammed on a daily basis. So it was suspended.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Supervisor Mowry, apparently you didn't believe me when I said that was the last question.
I apologize.
Supervisor Bates also.
I forgot which button I was supposed to push.
I would like to see us move forward to our business, so I'm going to ask you to be very brief. Okay. Supervisor Mowry.
Sure. I'll be very brief. I believe that we do have, we've made a lot of strides in our county in terms of alternatives to incarceration. There's a lot of pressures from the opioid epidemic and mental health and other issues, as was noted. I also hope that this study group is somewhat bold in terms of where they look and what ideas they consider. I know that counties that have been active participants in Stepping Up Initiative have assessed people at entry to jail for mental health, AODA, and sometimes other issues, and have tried to reach in with treatment and also reach out with treatment following people back into the community. A county in Arizona, for example, did this, and they had a 51% reduction in their average jail stay. I think we need to do that or consider and looking at other evidence-based best practices nationwide and be, particularly aware of things that we could do differently. We've done a lot of things, and because I think that the other question I had was how many people are cycling in and out of jail because of these mental health issues and drug issues? How many people are multiple jail residents over a certain period of time? And I think I've seen some stats on that, and it's pretty shocking.
That was brief?
That's brief.
Okay.
Stop.
Supervisor Bates.
Thank you. Just a quick question. We've been talking about a sixth judge. What impact, as far as the ability to get people before a judge, moving through the system, what impact do you estimate a sixth judge would have on the issues that you're facing?
I think it could be potentially very impactful. For example, judges are assigned cases at the filing of a court case. If someone's in court on a cash bond, for example, and they're out of intake, they need to go in front of the assigned branch to have that hearing held. There are only so many hours in a day. So if you have more time, and especially with our case filings going up, by definition, if you increase your judiciary by 16%, you're going to have more hearing times. That goes for not only bond reviews, it goes for sentencing dates. We have people that are waiting when they're revoked from probation, and we have to get time in front of a judge, and we show up, and the sentence is time served, simply because we couldn't get in front of a judge sooner. And that goes for all sorts of hearings and dispositions. So, yes, I think there would be a potential for tremendous impact if we have that sixth judge, simply from an ability to get a hearing.
Thank you. And now truly for the last brief question, Supervisor Moritz.
Yes, just quickly. We must know what it costs us per day to send somebody out to Chippewa Falls. So when this report is given, I'd like to know if we build a new jail or a bigger jail for our secure, if we build it, we add a bunch of employees and we have to pay interest on that, that has to be at the tipping point of less than what we're paying now, or we shouldn't do it. And you understand? So I'd like to know when we build something new, is it really a value to us, or should we just keep sending these people out until it becomes worthwhile financially to keep them here? Yeah. So to me, if we get this report, all the idiosyncrasies about people moving in and out of the system will not affect my vote. What will affect my vote is if this is really about the secure being not big enough, then it has to have so many people we're sending out that it makes sense to pay to keep them back in. Otherwise, we might as well just keep sending them out.
I agree.
Thank you. So I would hope that report would give us that number.
We're going to drive that very hard for that number.
Thank you. Thanks to all of you for that very lengthy and good report.
Can I just
Oh, sorry, Captain Brasina.
So I stand in front of you with a little history. As a jail administrator since 2002 and going through the first process, we were at that tipping point, and that's when we decided to build a new jail. Besides all of the inequities that were going on inside of our current facility that were woefully bad and needed replacement and upgrades. Today's world is maybe slightly different than what it was back in 2007, 8, 9, and 10, 11 when we were shipping inmates out. We actually had jail space regionally that was available to us. So although we're going to drive extremely hard at getting that tipping point number provided to you, we've already laid a lot of legwork in reference to what the pod might look like, how the design might drive our staffing levels, those types of things. Now that the fact that the jail is 94 inmates more in the secure side, how does that impact the rest of the housing units and the ability to move folks to court, those types of things? It will be truly, can we find those beds? So right now, it is a month by month. We called Chippewa on Friday morning and said, hey, you know, we're thinking we might have to ship some inmates out. Do you have space? And the answer was, yeah, we have about 10 or 15 beds available to you, because other jails are shipping and other jails are full. So the dynamics are a lot different than what they were when we had that same process in place 9 years ago or so. So we'll highlight that again in the report once we get to that point.
Thank you. Again, thanks to all of you for your report. Next oral report is from our county administrator.
I will be very brief.
Oh. Promise?
I guess, I forgot it was. Last week, the Committee on Administration met, and as part of that work, we talked about the work plan for 2019. And there are a number of things that will affect, of course, the entire board and our operation. And I would like to briefly let you know what those areas are going to be. We'll keep you posted on how the work is proceeding. The first is with performance management. The Finance and Budget Committee has spent a great deal of time talking about potential improvements to our performance management and how we can make that reporting more useful to our supervisors and to the constituency. And so we're going to be spending time with department managers in helping them identify appropriate performance measures, and we're also going to be looking at engaging with our oversight committees to ensure that you have the information in the format that you need it regarding those performance measures. And so that's one of the key initiatives that you can look forward to in 2019. Also, we will be doing a follow-up and some planning for the strategic planning that we do in 2020. We do that in April of even-numbered years, and so we do the planning for the process in the odd-numbered years. And we identified a few areas where we'd like to see improvement to the overall process, and so we will again be asking you for your input on that process and attempting to work with all of our stakeholders to make it easier to use, more effective, and a process that actually starts to flow into not only the budget, but regular ongoing reports for you as a board. And then finally, another area, the Finance and Budget Committee, as well as the Committee on Administration, are planning on having a meeting mid-February to talk about their definition of financial sustainability and to set the stage for the 2020 budget. We are going to be spending more time in the early days of that budget to ensure, again, that we have full and complete information. One of the components of that is the work that we do on our capital improvement project plan. Matt Tyson and Frank Draxler are working together to make that plan much more robust than it has been in the past. We want to ensure that it includes all of the information on regular ongoing maintenance of all of our facilities, as well as long-term plans. And then we will be bringing that forward earlier than we normally do to the Board of Supervisors for their reasoned consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. The supervisors, you have in your packets the written reports on the 2018 contingency fund, the 2019 contingency fund, and the overtime compensatory time report. The next item on our agenda is presentation of petitions, claims, and communications. We have a rezoning request from owners, which will go on to a future agenda. The next item is first reading of ordinances by committees, file 96.
This ordinance makes changes to the county code, Title IV, Finance and Revenue.
This item will go on to the agenda for the next regular meeting of the board. We have no items under number 9. Under number 10, first is file number 81.
Amending Section 2.09.005A of the code, definitions.
Speaking to that is Supervisor Beckfield, I believe. Oh, sorry. Thank you. Motion, please. Supervisor Miller, thank you. Second. Supervisor Schaffnagel. Now, Supervisor Beckfield.
I can't get my computer to pull up for some reason, but I believe that this is the motion that we had to do the housekeeping issue that we added last summer, the date of the holiday on the into the policy manual for payroll, et cetera, and how they're paid on those paid holidays, and was unanimously voted on and accepted. And what it is basically to amend the document so that it reflects what we voted on last summer.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any further discussion? I see none. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file number 81. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much. The next item on our agenda is file number 21.
To amend Section 16.30.040B of the code, fees and charges.
Motion, Supervisor Bates. Second, Supervisor Beckfield. Explanation, Supervisor Stelzis.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this actually makes 3 changes in our fee schedule. The first of which is to just provide some uniformity as to what we charge organizations who want to hold events at some of our parks or special use areas. Prior to this, it was highly variable. So this sets a standard where if an organization wants to use one of those facilities, we apply the same fee schedule to all parties. The second one related to transportation relates to people who are handicapped and may be transported to one of the park facilities by multiple vehicles, and this allows them to get a pass where that vehicle can be that pass can be transferred to different vehicles. So every person who transports that handicapped person does not have to buy a separate pass, but rather the individual can have a pass and provide that to their driver. And the third change relates to what used to be the Lions Club park that is on County Double Q along the Eau Claire River. That used to be managed by the Lions Club, who recently has given up that responsibility and provided it back to the county. And while it is not a park, it is a place where people have traditionally camped, so we set a fee schedule so that people could use that space as they have in the past. So I would ask for your support on these changes.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions, any discussion? I see none. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 21. Supervisor, okay, thank you. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. File number 98.
Authorizing the sale of tax deed property to former owner David A. Lone Wolf for $3,905.68, directing Corporation Counsel and the county clerk to execute said quitclaim deed.
Motion? Supervisor Lavelle. Second by Supervisor DeLuca. Explanation, Supervisor Dunning.
As it was said, this is a tax deed sale back to the previous owner. We are breaking even on the process, so recommend the sale.
Thank you. Are there any questions, any discussion? Seeing none, supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 98. That passes unanimously. Thank you. The next item is file number 99.
Authorizing payment of vouchers over $10,000 issued during the month of December 2018.
Motion, Supervisor Beckfield. Second, Supervisor Dunning. Need we have an explanation, Supervisor Dunning?
They're there.
They're there. Our explanation is they're there. Okay.
The committee has approved it.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Is there any discussion in regard to this motion? Seeing none, supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote on file 99. Supervisor Moritz and Supervisor Neiman. Thank you. We have 24 yes, 2 no. The motion passes. The next item on our agenda is appointments. We actually have 2 tonight. The first is appointment of Sydney Hanson as a member of the Veterans Service Commission. Who is motion from Supervisor Lavelle, second Supervisor Bates. Any discussion, questions? I see none. Supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote. There. Supervisor, okay. That is unanimous. Thank you very much. The final item is the appointment of, or approval of the appointment of the Veterans Service Director, Eric Killen. Motion, Supervisor Henning. Second, Supervisor Beckfield. Questions, discussion? Supervisor Neiman. Oh, I'm sorry, your light was lit here. Sorry. All right. I see no other lights lit, so supervisors, please take your keypads in hand and vote. Thank you. That is a unanimous vote. Thank you very much. We have come to the conclusion of our business. This meeting is now adjourned.
This program was brought to you by a cooperation between Newsworks and Eau Claire County. Newsworks is made possible by continuing community support. If you would like to volunteer or make a donation, please contact us via phone at 715-839-5067 or online at valleymediaworks.org.